Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
We haven't gotten our sense cams yet, but for a while now I've been wearing this guy, or versions of it. And what I'm really going to talk today about is, so I'm into the audio side of things, and what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about what it's been like to wear this for the last almost a year, actually, almost a year, I guess, and some things I've found about it. And what we're probably going to do at USC, in addition to hopefully some signal processing work, although Columbia, I think I'm just going to steal all the stuff they've done down, is look into hand these out to some of our MFA students in the film school and see what they do with them, and just see the sorts of observations they make. My work originally, my interest in this started with a project I did at Stanford. I did this Elmo Doll, and we were trying to make a context-sensitive Elmo doll that would pay attention to 3 kids at once and facilitate play between the children. And we used RFID tags so the children would pass around little plush dolls and things and play games. But in the process of doing this, you can barely see it, but we went ahead and we stuck 3 microphones, one in front of each kid. And it enabled us to do things just at the very beginning. I mean, we didn't do very much, but one of the things we did do was Elmo didn't speak unless the kids were quiet. It waited for a pause in the conversation. And just the ability for a doll to wait for everybody to shut up for a second before it injects itself turns out to be a powerful little trick. We also wanted to, and haven't done it yet, look at things such as Elmo calming the group down or knowing when they're excited or not excited just from noise levels. It was in the process of doing this that I did another proposal called CSAE, which was context-sensitive audio analysis for, something. But what that was really about is figuring out context from audio and then seeing if you can't apply that to devices. So in addition to Elmo, my cell phone should know that I'm talking right now. It should know from the cadence of my talk that I'm in a speech or something like that. It should certainly know if I'm in a conversation with another person, and when that's the case, it should vibrate instead of ring. It's not rocket science. And if Dan and I can pull it off, it'll know when it hears the reverberation of a bathroom, so the cell phone will not bother me when I'm in the bathroom. And that seems to be pretty straightforward that you can do with these context-sensitive devices. So I see the SenseCam as being just one. It's just sort of the pin of all that, and then we can see what flows out from it. Also, 2 years ago, I got to work with Trip Milliken. He was a graduate student in the Interactive Media program at USC, and he published this paper. It's pronounced Carpe. You put the E on the end there? Okay. At Carpe, where he wore a camera and recorded it on his Mac, which he carried around in a backpack, and what he was really interested in was the idea of blogging one's video in a way where other people could comment on your video, and the more they looked at certain segments, those would become more highlighted, almost like a community Flickr, where people could see it. And there's a lot he did on the user interface that we can talk about some other time. But it was his experiences wearing the camera 2 years ago when I decided, you know what, I should just be wearing a recorder, because it definitely changes things. Just a really quick note. We're a strange group of people in this room, and at one hand, I get so excited by some of the things you're saying that literally I couldn't sit still in this morning's keynote, and then other times I almost want to fall asleep. And so I'm just being honest, because we're a real interdisciplinary group. So I have this recent theory about interdisciplinary stuff, which is a balloon, and it's all qualitative, all right? But a balloon expands because PV equals nRT, which is the ideal gas law, where n is the number of molecules and there, r is a constant, and t is the kinetic energy, how fast they're bouncing around. And in academic work, what I'll claim is that we all have our little tiny edges of the balloon, and it's our job to move that balloon out just a little bit. And that's the body of knowledge, and we're just trying to do a little bit more in the last guy, and we've made the body of human knowledge a little bit bigger, and that's a nice, noble cause. To make that thing move out, though, I have to maximize this. And to do that, there's 2 things I can control, and one's the number of molecules and one's the temperature. So to be clear about that, and so we're a SenseCam here. How do we all relate to each other? Well, we don't. In fact, we're in many cases, very far apart from each other on the balloon. Am I surprised Library Sciences isn't talking with computers? No, I'm not. You're in entirely different places of the balloon. But the way we affect each other is by increasing either the number of molecules in here, and that's by sharing work with each other. Hey, I found this code works, you can have it. Well, that literally is just some molecules that help push you out a little bit because it's a ladder to stand on. And then the other way is T is actually kinetic energy, which is one half the mass times the velocity of the little molecules bouncing around. And the way you can help each other out, we can help each other, is we increase each other's velocity. And you can do that with excitement, and you can do it by sharing with ideas or looking at somebody else's ideas and saying, oh, they made these 3 bounces around, right? We're just, boop, 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 and then you come up with an idea. I wonder if that models, that's how he pushed this out here. I wonder if I can use that same sequence of steps down here. And so if we can increase each other's kinetic energy, then we can push each other's part out of the balloon. But we can't pretend like we actually know or sometimes even care about each other's edge of the balloon. What we do care and know about is the stuff inside the balloon that's pushing it out. So that's just a thing I like. I'm still trying to figure out what R is. So I'm going to talk about mainly observations of me using the SenseCam now. And I'm not going to use any slides at this point. So the first thing I found out is that I can't lose my hard drive. So I've never been particularly concerned about privacy on my computer, but I cannot lose my hard drive because I have people's personal conversations in there. And Dan mentioned the same thing. So I have just the opposite problem now. I have no copies of it. I keep it offline where it's not networked, and I'm thinking about erasing it when I'm done with the experiment. Except that then you come into what this data means to you, and it turns out it means a lot more to me than I thought. It's not just an experiment anymore. But I may have to go through and just erase parts of it because it is other people's conversations and data as well. It has changed my listening behavior. My wife commented, I was listening to a couple conversations where there was a lot of detailed information. I told the person I was probably going to listen to it again. I listened to it again. And one with my current boss, I'm sitting there in my bedroom trying to type up the notes from the conversation. And I just yell out loud, because she heard it in the other room, shut the blank up at myself, at my virtual self being listened to, because I just wasn't listening to the man. I just kept talking and talking and talking. And you hear this behavior. But what's interesting, and this has happened to me now twice, because I did it with another thing too, I will shut up now when I'm recording and I realize what I want is the recording. Because it's like being an AV guy. You're not going to talk. You want to get the shot. So in a weird way, knowing you're recording helps you shut up. Because you're sitting there listening to it from the mic's point of view going, oh, I don't want to talk right now. Then that's going to interrupt the whole flow. Let's let it finish out. So it's an interesting way of trying to capture a sequence of recording, and it makes me shut up. I learned that I live in an entirely different world than the person I'm speaking with. And we can go into that in more detail, but I had problems with a student interaction, and I know I said, you're going to do A, B, and C, and I know she said she was going to do A, B, and C, and it got to the end of the semester, and there were problems, and so I went back and I listened to the little short exchange I had, and yes, I said what I said, and she said what she said, and if you listen to my tone of voice and you hear her tone of voice, neither one of us were wrong. It was just that we live in different worlds, and I'm learning a lot about the lack of communication and how we're in completely different worlds. I thought that wearing a recording device would make it so that our world would be perfect. Nobody will ever lie again because everything's recorded. That seemed like it, right? You can never lie. Except I'm learning now that, in fact, all audio recording, all single sense data is a complete lie. I'm starting to believe less and less in using videos in court, because when I listen to recordings where I was there, you just hear an entirely different story. It doesn't pick up my expression. It doesn't pick up if I'm joking. I could say, yeah, I'm going to kill you, right? It'll hear that I'm going to kill the guy. So, in fact, an audio-only record is a lie. It gives me a feeling of security. So I know it sounds really silly, but you're walking down the street, and that guy, I wonder if that guy's going to mug me. And you're thinking to yourself, well, it's okay, I'll get it on tape. It's back there. I swear it's back there. And I even caught myself once, and yes, it's embarrassing. There was a suspicious car in my neighborhood, so I just spoke out the driver's license, because you know it's there, right? So I'll just say the driver's license out loud. It'll be on tape if I ever need to get to it. And then finally, it gives you the perfect alibi. So I think one of Pat Robertson, he would never see anybody in his office without the door cracked open a bit, because otherwise somebody can make accusations about things that happen when the door is closed. If you're recording everything you have, as long as you actually aren't doing anything bad, you have a perfect alibi. So it's a weird feeling of security having it, knowing that it's recorded. There's an art piece I want to do where I have found that there's a phase lock loop of life. A phase lock loop is when you notice a rhythm and then you sort of reinforce the rhythm as you go in an electronic circuit. And you notice that there's an elevator ding when I go to the health club, and it always dings when I get off on that floor, and then within 10 seconds of it dinging, I always say something stupid to the guy that's at the counter. And I'm thinking about putting together a piece where I just edit all those snips together, and sort of do a piece where you listen to this phase lock loop of your life, these cycles that happen anyways, that you don't realize, and that there's little variations each time, but it's also the same thing each time. So I find that interesting. A very important thing is the darn I wish I recorded that. So my mom is getting older, and I meet with her, and she shares little stories here or there, and I have the world's worst memory, and normally when I'd hear a story like that, I'd be feeling guilty already, because I know I'm going to forget it. It's like either I got to write it down, which will break the whole flow, so here she is telling me this snippet of information I've always wanted to know, and I'm going to forget it. Having the recorder allows you to do conceptual conversations with people and not detailed conversations, because you know the details are getting recorded. So it kind of changes the way you can talk. And the thing that Tripp found, and I'm finding as well, is knowing you're recording changes your behavior. Not a lot, but a little bit. You know you're being recorded, so you're quiet, so the person can talk, or you maybe cuss a little less, you're being recorded. Recording everything allows more partial attention. So most of you have been working on your laptops all day. It's what my students do. I was checking my email. I was putting together my presentation also. Those things don't get 100% of our attention anymore. And as a result, we have this sort of understanding that we'll always be able to find it later. I just need to know it exists. And it's sort of this I'll say MSN mentality, but what I want to say is Google mentality. And so recording kind of allows you to do that, because you go, okay, well, I did miss that thing that Dan just said, and that's why I came here, was to listen to his talk, and oh, it's okay, I got it on tape. And in fact, I never go back and listen to it, so it's a false thing, but it gives you the feeling that you can relax and have partial attention. That's a different topic, and I think partial attention is not necessarily a good thing, but there you go. Okay, legal and privacy issues. So those are just some personal anecdotes. Now, legal and privacy issues, I think they're going to go away because everything's being recorded anyways. There's a camera up there in the corner of this room. How do I know that's not on or off? So the personal rule that I use right now, because I don't know what all the rules are, is if there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, then I got to tell the person I'm recording it. The only time I break that rule is sometimes after the conversation, I'll tell the person I recorded it, do they want me to erase it? And I will freely, and I'll just erase it right now. Not once have I had somebody say I should erase it, even when it's been some heavy-duty political conversation where, we wouldn't want anybody to hear the thing. It's embarrassing, the things we said. I've never had anybody say, yeah, erase that. But if I'm one-on-one with somebody in a noisy environment, there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. Sharon Stone's in a lawsuit right now because Hollywood, apparently, if you're a big-time producer, you have like 3 or 4 admins, which is true. It's just out of a movie. I'm down at UFC now, so this whole film world is most interesting. But usually, apparently, one of the admins is listening in on the phone. So when you sit there and say, yeah, I'll send you that script tomorrow, Maury, and there's an admin listening to that, basically writing down all the promises you just made and making good on them. One of those admins, I believe, I don't know the full story, leaked something to the tabloid press. Sharon Stone sued the producer or agent because there was somebody listening in. It should have been private. And it's currently going to court with the defense being, everybody knows that admins are listening in. You didn't have a reasonable expectation of privacy. And I feel that that's where we're heading as society. I don't know how many different phones there are here, every one of which can be recording. We've got at least, 1 recorder, 2 recorders, that thing, the thing up in the corner. Everything is being recorded. There is not a reasonable expectation of privacy anymore. So that's one reason I think the problem's going to go away. The second is, and I didn't think this until this morning, but the medical value is just too high. If I say these things are helping people, then we're going to get legislation that allows them to be true. And that might be our best way to make it so these are allowable. That might be something we should consider as a community. Third one is, I had a button made that just said you were being recorded, and you can just wear that. The fourth is because the data will be eventually used by Homeland Security, so they'll just make sure we all record everything. And finally is, at least with audio, I think doing speaker ID to know who the speaker is, if it's the main wearer, is pretty easy with either a throat mic or 2 mics, knowing which way it's pointing and looking for low frequency. And as a result, we can do some of the tricks Dan was alluding to and other ideas too, where you can disembobulate other people's conversation but still pull out the acoustic characteristics. And then for the main person's conversation, keep that recorded. And in addition, that leads to the idea of networking these sense cams, where yours will record your conversation, mine will record my conversation, and we can figure out how to stitch that all together later. And that leads to another neat thing, which would be a microphone array, where if we all had these on, I've got this beautiful array of microphones in the room. There's all sorts of stuff I can do. And that segues right into alternative devices. So while wearing it, you think of a lot of alternative devices. The one I really want to do is the AugCog AudFob, I called it, the Augmented Cognition Audio Fob. My sense cam can kind of detect my state of mind. It can tell if I'm active. It knows the time of day. It knows where I'm at. Not yet, okay? This is a long ways off, but I had an admin, Yvonne Henry, and she was amazing because she could figure out my state of mind. And there'd be a stack of things for me to do, and it would grow and grow and grow. She wouldn't bug me. And then somehow she knew when, okay, he's going to do it now. And wham, that stack of papers would go to my desk, and boom, it was done in an hour instead of bugging me all week, right? Because she knew that moment. And I think we can make devices that do that, and then you make sense cams active as well as passive recorders. If I'm wearing it like a Walkman and it's also got music playing or something, then it can, okay, this is a little far-fetched, but it can say, Mark, it looks like it's a good time for you to go do this now. It could prompt me based on my behavior. It can prompt me based on seeing that I just ate. There's all sorts of stuff that it knows, and it can prompt me back. So the idea of active sense cams, I think, are something interesting. Using the sense cam as a document device, I think, is really positive. In addition to having just ambient wide angle, I think you should have a nice, tight little lens, and I can just grab documents. And toward that end, another thing it could do is it could have a little laser pointer out there, so it puts a little frame out so you know what it's taking. And I think that's an issue when you wear them. You don't actually know exactly what it's framing. It'd be nice if it could just put some laser lines out there and you know the frame. But if it could grab documents, that's a whole other set of data that it's not really getting right now. I only know that anecdotally because I haven't worn one yet. I want to do a stereoscopic sense cam because then I can pull out depth information. And then finally, and this is the one that's been true with this, is I now carry multiple ones of these. I carry an extra one or two in my bag because I give it to people. So I have a student, they're going to a lecture. I really want to go to the lecture. I can't go to the lecture. They're leaving class. So I literally grabbed it. You press record because it's going to record forever. It doesn't matter. I mean, for hours. And I just give it to the student and say, would you please just take this to the lecture and give it to me tomorrow when you see me? Done. I got the lecture. And I actually listened to that one. It would work. The audio was a little hard to hear. But so the idea so this is a different device type. But I think we're heading towards personal digital surrogates, where the best story I have on this front wasn't this recorded, but was my cell phone. I'm in the DMV. They're calling off the numbers for you to get your driver's license, and you can tell, oh boy, this is going to be an hour or two because I didn't have an appointment. But they won't tell you exactly when it is. So I had two cell phones. So I called up one cell phone on the other cell phone, and I put my one up on a shelf, and I went to the local coffee shop where they had wireless, and I just listened. And I could hear the numbers playing, and there's, uh-oh, they're getting close to my number, and then I left the coffee shop and went back to the DMV. I always have two cell phones now. Sorry, those 2 hours alone, it was worth the bill. And so this idea of having a surrogate, I think, is something that the SenseCam is going to be part of, but it's a larger product category, but the idea of recording is only half of it. But a legal surrogate would be really interesting, too, or for like shareholder meetings, you have to physically be at a shareholder meeting. I still don't understand that, but you have to have a legal presence. I believe it's still that way. You could have encrypted devices that did that, or you FedEx basically this legal surrogate of yourself, and it arrives at the meeting, and they take it out, and it's sort of a little cell phone SenseCam, and it's there, and it can respond, and it can even do feedback where it knows if what you've said is what they heard, and stuff like that. So I think personal digital surrogates is something to consider in all of this. I think there's lessons from the world of scrapbooks. So in the memory things you were talking about today, in a lot of ways, you take photographs, at least a person like me takes photographs, because otherwise I just don't remember it. So we all have been doing scrapbooks, we all have been doing memory aids, and it's extremely strong for the applications you were saying, but it's true for me. The things I remember about my undergrad years just happen to be the things I happen to have photographs of. That's kind of strange. So scrapbooks are, in a lot of ways, what we're already doing, and I think we can look at, there's a whole mentality about scrapbooks that I think we can start mining to learn about SenseCams. The difference is that scrapbooks have changed in value because imaging is dirt cheap. So the way my students, interactive media students, shoot images is entirely different because they've never had to worry about the cost of film. So they just shoot images. I mean, from the hip, on the ground, here, there, they just shoot as much film as they need, as many images as they need to shoot. Then they post them all up on Flickr. And then what's interesting is I then go to Flickr to look at images of things I didn't go to. And then I kind of felt like I went to them because I know what happened and everything. And I think that's another interesting part of this, is I think we can start creating false memories with SenseCams. And John and I were just talking about, or you could augment it, where maybe the thing I'm supposed to remember is the coffee cup for some reason. I could highlight the coffee cup. I could go back and post-process the data and then show it to the person. But there's no reason that the memory recollection of the SenseCam actually has to be the real world. And I think philosophically that's an interesting point. If there's anything going on in computer science and everything that I am seeing in my life, it's that everything is just becoming virtual. The computer's swallowing it all up. And what's more interesting to me is that my students don't accept it unless it's virtual. in a weird way, it doesn't count unless it's been digitized and it's on a hard drive. So in a strange way, their memories don't count. Just like mine didn't count unless I took a picture of it and it was in a scrapbook, theirs don't count unless it's on Flickr. And I just think that's an interesting way to look at this, that what the SenseCam is doing is what Google's doing with books right now, and Microsoft's doing by mapping up cities. We're swallowing up the real world, and we're just shoving it all onto disks. And all the SenseCam is about is swallowing up our real world and shoving it onto disk, and then looking at all the power that computer science can give us with that, and augmenting our memory and all these other things that have been discussed today. I like to think of that as that reality doesn't exist unless it's on a hard drive. So, and I really think my students are getting towards there. Just an interesting observation along these lines also is that I no longer view taking a photograph as recording. Taking a photograph in the real world is editing. You're choosing what you're going to take the photograph of. Now that I have this audio recorder, I don't want to think about when I'm going to record or not. I just want to record it all. I'll edit later. I'll decide what to snip out of that later. And I think we're going to see that with visual images too. Now, editing requires context. You have to kind of know what was going on. I have no problem finding conversations from the SenseCam if I do it the day I recorded them or the day after, because I know the context. I don't even do an FFT on it. All I do is you look at the overall waveform, and oh, that's where I was driving in the car because it's big and noisy, and then, oh, that's where it's quiet. I must have been in my office, and then, oh, I think that's the conversation. Then you click in there, and it takes you maybe a minute, but you can find where the conversation started and ended because you have context for it. So something I proposed originally, which we're not able to pursue right now, but the acronym for it was DREAM, which was Data Recovery Engine for Augmented Memory. Maybe a year from now, when we all have these ways of pulling context out, Dan will have a whole bunch of audio ways, and there'll be some vision ways, and there's all these different ways we pull context. We're going to need to find a way to do what we do at night when we dream, which we take all the sensory data and we try to put it together in some form of context and make sense out of it. So this year isn't right for us as a group to do it, but maybe a year from now it is, where his audio stuff's going to work better, or my audio stuff's going to work better if you can tell me where my GPS coordinates were and what you know about the... We can get all of our context to come together. That's going to make sense. And I just love the acronym DREAM, so I had to use it today. And then the point I'd like to end with is that it's irresponsible not to wear a SenseCam. I didn't start wearing this all the time until I thought about how kind of quietly upset I was at my parents when I was a kid that they didn't take more pictures when they were kids. It's like, well, why didn't you do that? What a waste. And now I'm starting to realize that when I pass away, my kids are going to say, why didn't you record your life? So you didn't record your life? What? You're dying? You know, you didn't record your life. I don't know how else to put it. It's really tragic when you think of it that way. And now that I record the thing, it's got, oh, and my daughter said this cute thing and that cute thing, and I have no idea how I'm ever going to find those clips again. I know it's an issue. But for my kids to become grown-ups, they're going to look back and they're going to say, oh, thank God he recorded those things. And I almost feel, I'm just going to repeat it, it's going to be irresponsible not to wear one. I really think that's where we're headed. You know, we don't remember people's lives unless they wrote a book or their stories are remembered. That's the whole remember somebody. And this is a way where every one of our lives gets to get recorded somehow. And I don't know how it's ever going to get viewed again. I actually have a science fiction story I want to write, which is that in the future, when we're so crowded and everything that we can't really have our own lives, that we'll go back to all the SenseCam memories of people and we'll live their life. We'll just listen to their whole day because we don't have a day. But I'll listen to the whole day that Mark had and I'll live vicariously through it. That was basically it. Any questions?
So I want to know, so your old acronym is out. What is it they did?
Which old acronym?
Well, you said the DREAM acronym you can't do now. So what?
Oh, no, I can do it. We didn't get any funding to do that part of the project, so I'm not actively doing that right now. And now that I'm here seeing everybody, we're not all as far along as I thought when I wrote the proposal, including myself. So I think a year from now, this idea of having, I came up with it, as Dan knows, it takes, if you recorded 8 hours of audio, it takes you like 8 hours to analyze it. So this idea that it's going to take nighttime, we're going to plug our SenseCams in, and then all night, basically our machine's going to chew on the data and dream and figure out the context with it and tag it all. I think when we get our algorithms a little further along and our applications further along, we're going to want to create a dream engine to do exactly that. Thank you much.
It's very interesting to have very good points in the day to have that topic, and you made some really interesting points. And the one that I struggle with most of all, actually, is, I mean, I wonder, it sounds to me like you can't take this off around your neck right now, right? You can't be without your audio.
I know when it's not there.
Right. And how do you feel about it? How would you feel about leaving the house tomorrow without it and not having it?
That happens a lot because because the battery dies or because I forget it,
Right.
and once in a while, like if I'm taking a break, just physically wearing it, I don't want it on. But
Okay.
it's very light. There are conversations that I've been in when I then go, oh shoot, I wish I had it on.
Right.
Yeah.
I was interested in the point that you made earlier on about having conversations with people and being able to listen better, because you're not listening to the details so much anymore,
Right.
but that you're able to have a much more conceptual conversation with somebody. And that there isn't this need, therefore, to pay quite so much attention to
the details. Right.
But actually what you're talking about is recording absolutely every single detail by wearing a sense cam, by having audio, recording 24/7 pretty much.
Right.
You're talking about capturing as many details as possible. And I wonder what we lose conceptually by having that much information. Do you know what I mean? So if we're analysing at that level, with that amount of detail all the time, what we don't do is allow our brains to get on with the go of this kind of habit.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's more a point of where information technology is bringing us in general.
Yeah.
And the fact that how many people have had a dinner party recently where they didn't run to go Google something? The fact that there is always an answer, I believe, is changing education, where my students don't strive so they believe there's always an answer, so what good is their work? I think it changes our ability to be creative. I think it changes a lot of things. And this is one in that brick wall that we're building. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it just is. Thank you.